lost, but not forgotten. I am an old man now, but I will never forget that day. It was many years ago when I was a young man. Life was simple, but I often felt lonely. I had no family and lived in a small room in the city. I spent most of my days working and walking alone in the streets. One rainy evening, I was walking home from work. The streets were wet and the air was cold. I pulled my coat tighter around me and kept my head down. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw a woman running toward me. She looked tired and scared. Her clothes were wet from the rain and her face was pale. "James," she cried out, "I finally found you." I was confused. My name was not James, but she was looking at me as if she knew me. I didn't know what to say. She ran up to me and held my hand. Tears filled her eyes. "James, I've been searching for you for so long," she said. Her voice was full of emotion. I stood there, frozen, not knowing how to respond. I tried to tell her, "I'm sorry, but I'm not James." But she didn't seem to hear me. She hugged me tightly and cried, "Please don't leave me again." I felt her pain, and my heart ached for her. I didn't know who she was, but I could see that she had been through a lot. The rain kept falling as we stood there on the street. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just let her hold me and cry. I could feel her sadness, and it reminded me of my own loneliness. For a moment, I thought about pretending to be James, just to make her feel better. The woman's tears fell on my coat as she clung to me. I stood still, unsure of what to do. Her sadness felt heavy, like a weight on my chest. She whispered, "I've been alone for so long, James. I thought I lost you forever." Her words broke my heart. I gently pulled away and looked into her eyes. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I think you've made a mistake. My name isn't James." Her face changed. Confusion replaced her hope. She stared at me, trying to understand. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You look just like him. You must be James. You can't be anyone else?" Her voice was desperate. I could see the pain in her eyes, and it made me feel guilty, even though I had done nothing wrong. She took a step back and wiped her tears. The rain was still falling, and her hair was soaked. She looked at me again and said, "If you're not James, who are you?" I told her my name, but it didn't seem to matter to her. She just stood there, silent and lost. I didn't know what to do. A part of me wanted to walk away, but I couldn't leave her like this. I felt her pain, and it reminded me of my own loneliness. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Do you need anything?" She shook her head slowly. "I thought I'd found him," she said quietly. "James was my brother. He disappeared many years ago. I've been looking for him ever since." Her voice broke as she spoke, and I could see the weight of her grief. The street was quiet except for the sound of the rain. I didn't know what to say to her. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't have the words. Instead, I said, "Let's get out of the rain. There's a small cafe nearby. We can sit and talk." She hesitated, but finally nodded. We walked together in silence to the cafe. The warm light inside felt comforting after the cold rain. We sat at a small table by the window. She stared at her hands, and I could see that they were trembling. I ordered 2 cups of tea and waited for her to speak. After a while, she looked at me and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. It's just that you reminded me so much of him." I nodded and said, "It's okay. I can see how much he meant to you." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she smiled a little. The warmth of the cafe surrounded us, but her sadness lingered. I didn't know her story yet, but I could feel that it was full of loss and pain. The tea arrived, and we sat quietly for a moment. She held the cup with both hands, trying to stop them from shaking. I could see the sadness in her eyes, but also a small glimmer of hope. I decided to ask, "Can you tell me about James?" She looked up at me, surprised by my question. Then she nodded and began to speak. "James was my older brother," she said softly. "He was always kind and protective. When I was scared, he would hold my hand and tell me everything would be okay." Her voice trembled as she spoke, but she kept going. "One day, he left to find work in another town. He promised he would come back soon, but he never did. My family waited for him, but there was no news. We searched for him everywhere, but it was like he disappeared." She paused and wiped her eyes. "That was 10 years ago." I didn't know what to say. Her story was full of pain and unanswered questions. "I'm so sorry," I said. "It must have been so hard for you and your family." She nodded and said, "It was. My parents passed away a few years later, still hoping he would return." Her words hit me deeply. I thought about how lonely she must have felt all these years, searching for someone she loved. I also thought about my own life and how I had no one waiting for me. In that moment, I felt connected to her pain. She looked at me and said, "When I saw you on the street, I thought my prayers had been answered. You look so much like him. I thought it was finally over, but now—" Her voice trailed off, and she stared at her tea. I wanted to help her, but I didn't know how. "Do you have anything that belonged to James?" I asked. "Maybe something that could help you remember him?" She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph. The picture was faded, but I could see a young man smiling with a little girl beside him. She pointed to the man and said, "That's James, and that's me when I was a child." I looked closely at the photo and felt a strange mix of emotions. The man in the picture did look a little like me, but I could also see how different we were. I handed the photo back to her and said, "You've been so brave to keep looking for him all these years. Not everyone would have the strength to do that." She smiled weakly and said, "I don't know if it's bravery or just desperation. I can't let go of the hope that he's still out there somewhere." The cafe grew quieter as the evening went on. The rain outside had stopped, but the clouds still covered the sky. I sat with her, listening to her story and feeling her pain as if it were my own. The cafe was quiet, and the warmth of the tea in my hands gave me a little comfort. I looked at her face, tired and full of sorrow. She stared out of the window, lost in her thoughts. I didn't want her to feel alone, even if I couldn't be the person she was looking for. I know this might sound strange, I said gently, but I think James would want you to keep going no matter what. She turned to me with a small, sad smile. You think so? She asked. I nodded. If he loved you as much as you loved him, he would want you to be happy, even if he couldn't be here. She sighed deeply and said, I've tried to move on, but it's so hard. Every time I see someone who looks like him, my heart skips a beat. I think maybe this time it's him, but it never is. Her voice broke as she finished speaking, and I felt a deep sadness in my chest. I hesitated before asking, Have you ever thought about what you would say to him if you found him? She looked down at her hands and said, I would tell him that I missed him every day. I would tell him that I forgave him for leaving and that I just wanted to see him one last time. Her words stayed with me. I thought about the people I had lost in my own life. There were so many things I never got to say to them. Sometimes, I said slowly, we carry the weight of things we can't change. But even if James isn't here, the love you have for him is still real. That love will never leave you. She nodded, and for the first time she looked a little calmer. Maybe you're right, she said. Maybe it's time to stop searching and start remembering him in my heart. Her words felt heavy, as if she was letting go of a burden she had carried for years. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of the rain outside. I didn't know if I had helped her, but I hoped that sharing her story had eased her pain, even just a little. As the evening grew darker, she reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for listening. I don't know why, but talking to you feels like talking to him. Maybe that's what I needed all along. I felt a lump in my throat and managed to say, I'm glad I could help. She smiled, a real smile this time, and it warmed the cold corners of the cafe. When we finally left the cafe, the rain had stopped, and the streets were quiet. She looked at me one last time and said, I will never forget this night. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the city. I stood there for a long time, watching the empty street. My heart was heavy, but also full. I knew I would never forget her story or the pain in her voice. It was a reminder that even strangers could share something deep and meaningful. After she left, I stood in the quiet street for a long time. The air was cold, and the ground was still wet from the rain. I thought about everything she had told me. Her story stayed with me like a weight in my heart. I didn't know her name, but I felt like I had known her forever. When I walked home that night, the city felt different. The lights seemed dimmer, and the streets were empty. I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wondered if she was safe, if she had somewhere warm to stay, or if she was walking through the city alone. When I reached my small room, I sat by the window and looked out at the dark sky. The stars were hidden by clouds, and the world seemed quiet. I couldn't shake the image of her sad eyes and trembling hands. I wished I could have done more for her. Over the next few days, her words echoed in my mind. She had spent years searching for someone she loved, only to find herself lost in the process. It made me think about my own life. I didn't have anyone waiting for me, and I had spent so many years feeling invisible. One evening, I decided to visit the cafe again. I sat at the same table where we had talked, hoping she might come back. The waiter recognized me and asked, "Waiting for someone?" I nodded but didn't explain. I just sat there, staring at the empty seat across from me. Hours passed, but she never came. As I walked home, I realized she had given me something without even knowing it. Her story, her pain, and her hope had reminded me of something important: the power of connection. Even though we were strangers, we had shared a moment that would stay with me forever. That night, I took out an old notebook I hadn't used in years. I started writing about her search for James, and about how her story had touched me. The words came slowly at first, but soon they flowed like a river. Writing about her felt like a way to keep her memory alive. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself looking at people differently. I wondered about their stories, their losses, and their hopes. I realized that everyone carries something with them, even if they don't show it. I never saw her again, but I often thought about her. I hoped she had found peace, that she had stopped searching and started healing. And I hoped that, in some small way, our meeting had helped her let go of the pain she carried for so long. Sometimes I still sit by the window in my small room, looking at the stars and wondering where she is. The memory of that rainy night stays with me, reminding me that even brief encounters can leave a lasting mark on our hearts. Years have passed since that rainy night, but I still think about her. I never learned her name, but her story became a part of me. Sometimes I wonder if she ever found peace, if she ever stopped searching for James. I like to believe that she did. Her words stayed with me, especially what she said about love and hope. "I can't let go," she had told me. At the time, I didn't fully understand her pain, but now, as an old man, I understand it more than ever. Life has taught me that everyone is searching for something or someone. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Other times, we don't. But the search itself changes us. It shapes who we are and reminds us of what truly matters. After that night, I began to see the world differently. I started noticing the people around me, the small details of their lives. A mother holding her child's hand, an old man sitting alone on a bench, a young couple laughing together. I realized that every person carries their own story, their own pain, and their own hope. I never went back to the cafe after those weeks of waiting. It wasn't because I didn't want to see her again. It was because I knew that our meeting had served its purpose. She had given me a gift without realizing it, the gift of understanding the power of connection. Over the years, I wrote her story many times in my notebook. I added details, imagined her life, and tried to capture the emotions of that night. I wanted to preserve the memory, not just for myself, but for others who might one day read it. Now, as I sit by my window and watch the stars, I think about what I would say to her if I ever saw her again. I would tell her that she taught me something important. She showed me that even a stranger can make a difference in your life. I would thank her for reminding me that love and hope are what keep us moving forward, even when life feels heavy. And I would tell her that, in my own way, I found peace too. Her story became my story, and I carry it with me every day. It's a reminder that we are all connected, even if only for a moment. The people we meet, the stories we share, they leave marks on our hearts, shaping who we are and who we become. As I close my notebook for the last time, I feel a sense of calm. Her memory will stay with me forever, a quiet reminder of a rainy night, a stranger's pain, and the power of kindness.